Think about the last time you walked into an empty room. What did you do in the first 3 seconds? Be honest. Did your hand already know where your phone was before your brain even finished the thought? Did you feel this small itch, this need to fill the silence with something? A notification, a podcast, a text to someone, anyone, just to prove the room wasn't as quiet as it felt. You're not broken for doing that. Almost everyone does it. But here's the strange part. We are the most connected generation in human history. You could message 500 people right now without standing up. And yet, by nearly every measure we have, we are also the loneliest generation ever recorded. That's the paradox sitting underneath modern life. More connection, more isolation, both at the same time. And I want to suggest something today that might sound strange at first. Being alone is not the disease. It's not a curse. And it's not something wrong with you. Being alone, done right, might actually be one of the most powerful skills a person can develop. There's an old distinction that Zen teachers have pointed to for centuries, and modern psychology is only now catching up to. It's the difference between loneliness and solitude. 2 words that describe the exact same situation, you by yourself, but 2 completely different inner experiences. Today, we're going to walk through why your brain fights so hard against being alone, what solitude actually is once you strip away the fear, and 3 real, practical steps to make peace with silence, so that the next time you walk into an empty room, you don't reach for your phone. You reach for yourself. Let's start with the fear itself, because it's real and it's not your fault. Go back, way back, to the earliest humans. For most of our history, survival was a team sport. If you were separated from your tribe, you didn't just feel sad. You were probably going to die. No protection, no food sharing, no safety in numbers. Your brain has a built-in smoke detector for being alone. But today, it's going off even when there isn't a fire. That alarm system is still fully installed in you right now in the 21st century. Except today, being alone for an evening doesn't put you in danger of a predator. It just means it's quiet, but your nervous system doesn't always know the difference. So it translates silence into anxiety. It whispers that something is wrong. And most of us have learned, without ever deciding to, that the fastest way to shut that whisper up is noise. Scrolling, texting, background noise, anything. Now let's look at this from another angle, the Zen angle. There's a concept in this tradition sometimes called the false self, or the ego, not ego as in arrogance, but ego as in the constructed identity you carry around, the one that needs constant proof that it exists. It needs to be seen, liked, replied to, included. That version of you is basically running on external validation, like a phone running on battery, and when there's no one around to plug it into, it starts to panic. It mistranslates quiet for rejection. It hears silence and says, "Nobody wants you here." But that's not the truth. That's just the ego's smoke alarm going off, because the smoke detector doesn't know the difference between a fire and a match. And here's the part that actually explains why solitude can feel so uncomfortable at first. When you finally sit still, no scrolling, no distraction, no noise, what rises to the surface isn't nothing. It's everything you've been quietly outrunning. The overthinking, the old wound you haven't looked at, the question you've been avoiding about your career, your relationship, your direction in life. Busyness is a wonderful painkiller. Silence takes the painkiller away. So when people say, "I hate being alone," what they often mean is, "I hate what surfaces when there's nothing left to distract me from it." That's not weakness. That's just what happens when the noise finally stops. And it's also exactly why learning to sit with it changes everything. So let's define our 2 words clearly, because the difference between them is the entire point of this video. Loneliness is the experience of lack. It's looking at your life and seeing a glass that's half empty, and worse, believing that only another person from the outside can fill it back up. When you're lonely, you are constantly facing outward, waiting for a text back, waiting for plans, waiting for someone to notice you're there. Loneliness is a hunger that keeps looking for its next meal somewhere out there. Solitude is the opposite experience of the exact same situation. It's not about lack, it's about abundance. It's the discovery that you are not a half-empty glass waiting to be filled by someone else. You are already whole. In many contemplative traditions, this deeper, unshakable sense of self is sometimes called your true nature, something that was never actually missing, just covered over by noise. Solitude is what happens when you stop looking outward for wholeness, and instead notice that it was already here, quietly, the entire time. Same room, same silence, same person sitting in a chair, but one version is starving and the other version is at peace. The circumstances didn't change. The relationship to those circumstances did. Now, here's where this gets even more interesting, because of an idea sometimes called interbeing. Zen philosophy teaches that the sharp line we draw between me and everything else is, in many ways, an illusion the mind constructs. You didn't invent the air you're breathing right now. It was in someone else's lungs before it was in yours, and it will be in someone else's after. When you sit in stillness, you are not actually cut off from the world. You're sharing breath with every living thing around you in this very moment. Under that lens, true isolation is almost impossible. You are never as separate as loneliness convinces you that you are. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm not a lion. I'm just someone trying to eat dinner without a YouTube video playing. But there's a reason this ancient story matters for your phone habits today. There's an old Zen story that captures this well. A lion, raised among a flock of sheep, spends years trying to bleat like them, walk like them, disappear into the herd, desperate not to stand apart. One day he wanders to a still pond and sees his own reflection for the first time. Not a sheep, a lion. The pond didn't change him. It simply showed him what was true the entire time. Silence works the same way. It's not punishment. It's the still water. It's the one place quiet enough for you to actually see your own reflection instead of the reflection everyone else has been describing to you. Seeing your true reflection in the silence is the goal. But how do you actually stop the sheep in your head from bleeding long enough to look? It starts with how you talk to yourself tonight. Step 1. Reframe the silence. This starts with language, because the words in your head shape the emotion in your body. Right now, when you're alone, your default internal sentence might be something like, I'm isolated, nobody's here, this is sad. I want you to catch that sentence and replace it deliberately with something closer to the truth. This is my appointment with myself. This is the one meeting I never cancel. This is where I recover. That's not a cute reframe, it's a functional one. The way you name an experience changes how your nervous system responds to it. So tonight, try this. Turn off notifications for 1 hour, not because you're punishing yourself, but because you're protecting an appointment. Treat your own solitude with the same respect you'd give a meeting with someone important, because it is one. Step 2. Practice wholehearted presence. Loneliness often isn't really about being physically alone. It's about being mentally somewhere else while your body sits in an empty room. Half your mind is checking who texted, who posted, who might be thinking about you. You're alone, but not fully alone, because you're still spending your attention on people who aren't in the room. Wholehearted presence means bringing your mind back to your body. There's a simple teaching here. When you drink tea, just drink tea. When you clean the kitchen, just clean the kitchen. Not planning your next 5 messages while you do it, actually doing the one thing in front of you, completely. Try it with something small tonight. Cook a meal without a screen nearby. Walk without a podcast in your ears. Notice how, when the present moment gets your full attention, it starts to feel surprisingly full. Full enough that the ache of missing something quietly fades, because you're no longer split between two places at once. Step 3. Become your own friend and watch for a trap. Solitude gets richer when you actually build a relationship with yourself the same way you'd build a friendship with anyone else. Journaling, making something, sitting with a question instead of immediately Googling the answer, getting curious about your own mind instead of just managing it. But here's an important warning, because this path has a trap in it, sometimes called spiritual bypassing. Solitude is meant to fill you up with steadiness and warmth, not to turn you into someone who avoids people, avoids responsibility, or hides behind the word self-care to disconnect from everyone who needs you. If your alone time is starting to replace your relationships entirely, or becoming an excuse to withdraw from real obligations, that's not solitude anymore. That's just isolation wearing a nicer outfit. Real solitude doesn't pull you away from people forever. It prepares you to return to them as someone steadier than before. Here's the paradox I want to leave you with. You cannot deeply connect with another person until you first learn to sit without flinching in connection with yourself. If you walk into a relationship starving, you're not really looking for love. You're looking for someone to feed a hunger that only you can actually fill. But when you've made peace with solitude, everything changes. You stop showing up to relationships as someone begging to be completed. You show up as someone already whole, bringing that wholeness to share, not to trade. So the next time you walk into an empty room and that old itch shows up, the one that reaches for your phone in 3 seconds, flat, pause, just for a moment. Let the silence stay a little longer than it's used to. It's not empty. It never was. It's actually the one space left where you can hear yourself think and remember who you were before the noise started telling you who to be. If this shifted something in you, even a little, hit like, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs to hear that being alone isn't something to fear, it's something to finally, quietly, come home to.